So in honor of Hei Teves, when we celebrate the Sfarim, the holy books, one of the things the Rebbe recommended is that we purchase new books and we study from those books. And here we're going to talk about some of the books we have at the SoulWords House, and maybe it might give you some ideas about some purchases you want to make. We'll put some links below in the description so that you can actually get those books in an easy way. But we're just going to take you through, show you some of the books we have and some interesting stuff. I do want to mention, by the way, that the books here at the SoulWords House were sponsored. It's a dedication, actually. The famous radio personality Michael Savage sponsored the Sfarim here in honor of his grandfather, Reb Simcha ben Reb Levi, Sam Weiner. So you probably know the Jewish people are known as people of the book, and when we say the book, we're talking about the Torah, which means the 5 books of Moses. Here's the Chumash. Chumash means the 5 books of Moses that we have here in the SoulWords House. I chose everything here. You know, we don't have a lot of books, so we were very selective. Not just things that look attractive. Obviously, it should be aesthetically pleasing on the shelf. And there is a concept, by the way, of bayis malei sfarim, that the Rebbe encouraged people to just have your home full of holy books. That's aside from studying from them, which obviously is a virtue unto itself, but just having them around. So we chose things that look nice. This is one of my favorite versions of the Chumash because this has in it, and this was made by Chabad of California, this has commentary, not just Rashi, which is the standard, and when you're doing your Chitas, we'll talk a little bit more later about learning every day Chumash, Tehillim, Tanya, but when you're doing your Chitas, it's helpful to have the Rashi. But in addition, there's a commentary that's based on the Rebbe's teachings, from the Likkutei Sichos and Maimorim, and that really brings everything to life. It gives deeper spiritual explanations to everything. This is really one of my favorite Chumashim. Now, this is a Tanach. Tanach means Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. So it's not just the 5 books of Moses, but it's also prophets and the writings. Now, this is interesting. This also has Chumash. This is a Chitas, but I want to tell you a little bit about this. Actually, I have another Chitas. I have 2 of them. This is the large-size Chitas from Kahos, which is modeled on the original Chitas. Let's explain what that is. It's an acronym, Chumash, Tehillim, Tanya. So you have your Chumash, Tehillim, and you have your Tanya here. Now, this is a large size version of the original Chitas, which actually has a story behind it. The study of Chitas, Chumash, Tehillim, Tanya, goes back centuries, but when it became a daily study with a schedule for what you're supposed to learn every single day, that was with publishing the Hayom from the Rebbe. Here's actually the Hayom that we have here, and in the Hayom, which with each day it has we'll go back to the Hayom in a minute. That has the daily study schedule. But then in the 80s, there was a rabbi in Jerusalem, Rabbi Slonim, who asked the Rebbe if we could, for convenience sake, put the Chumash, the Tehillim, and the Tanya all in one book bound together. And the Rebbe not only approved of it, but encouraged it. And since then, I don't know how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of books like this have been printed. Now, this, let me just show you for a second, is also a Chitas. See, it says Chitas. It's the Chayenu Chitas. And it has English. And this was sponsored by my good friends David and Ida Schottenstein edition, right here. Okay. Now, I told you before that the Chitas is the Chumash, Tehillim, Tanya, all bound together in one book. I want to show you something. By contrast, here we have, I'm going to bring this out here. Okay. This is Kesser Shem Tov from the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, Dvorov, Liyankiv, and Tora from the Mezritcher Magid, who is the Baal Shem Tov's disciple and successor, and the Likkutei Tanya from the Alter Rebbe, who was the successor and disciple of the Magid. So you have the first 3 generations of Chassidus, Baal Shem Tov, Magid, Alter Rebbe. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said that every Jewish home should have these books, that they should be together on the shelf, but interestingly, they should not be bound together in one volume. They should be separate volumes, but next to each other. So that's exactly how we have, and it's a very spiritually powerful thing for every home to have on their shelf. Now, as long as we're mentioning Tanya, we mentioned Tanya in the Chitas, we mentioned Tanya as part of the series of books from the first 3 generations of Chassidus. So I just want to show you also, we have here the lessons in Tanya. Gorgeous case over here. The lessons in Tanya, these are based on the scripts from the radio show that Rabbi Yossel Weinberg, Olav Shalom, gave every Motzei Shabbos on Saturday night. And when he would give his class, he would write his script, he would give his class on the radio, and he would write a script, and he would submit it to the Rebbe for the Rebbe's approval. So these notes that we have that explain Tanya come from that, and it's a very fundamental commentary on Tanya. I highly recommend, if you're beginning Tanya, really the lessons in Tanya is the way to go. Now, I mentioned before that the Chitas, the Chumash Tilim Tanya daily study schedule, first appeared in the Hayom. So now I want to show you the Hayom. This is from the Rebbe. So you see here the date, Tavshin Gimel. That means 1943. So this was the Rebbe's first book. And it has every single day an entry for the day. Look, Yud Aleph Nisan. It says, Bayom Oledes, on a person's birthday. Yud Aleph Nisan is the Rebbe's birthday. On a person's birthday, a person should be by himself, and he should think about everything from the past year and what he has to fix. Now, I'll tell you something interesting about Hayom. All of the writing in Hayom are excerpts from the Frierdiker Rebbe's teachings. The Rebbe's Rebbe, the Rebbe's father-in-law, who was his Rebbe. So they're from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Sichos and Maimorim and letters. So what's very interesting is Hayom, there's a custom that many rabbis have when they make a book. You're supposed to put your name into the title of the book. So if you look here, Hayom, it actually has the Rebbe's name, but before it actually has his Rebbe's name, because Yud is Yosef Yitzchak, that's the previous Rebbe's name, and then Mem, Menachem Mendel, that's the Rebbe's name. So Hayom is the Frierdiker Rebbe's name and the Rebbe's name connected with the Vav. Vav means and, it means connection. So the Rebbe's connection to his Rebbe is encoded in the title of the book, his first book. Now, since we're talking about the Rebbe's teachings, Hayom was the Rebbe's first sefer, I just want to show you here 2 full shelves of, it's actually more than 2 full shelves, but this is the Igrot, the Rebbe's letters. This is Likkutei Sichos, the edited talks of the Rebbe. There are many, many more talks which are not edited. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Igrot. The Igrot are letters that the Rebbe wrote. To whom? To everyone. Anyone who wanted to write to the Rebbe could write to the Rebbe. We're talking about men and women, young and old, religious, not religious, famous people, world leaders, captains of industry, school teachers, mothers, fathers. Every type of person would write to the Rebbe. And in the Igrot, you get a window into how the Rebbe would deal with real life, everyday issues from all types of people. Now, what's interesting is, in Chelik Yud Beis, volume 12, there's a mavoi, which means like an intro. And it was written by Beryl Levin, who is the chief librarian of the Rebbe's library. And in this intro, in volume 12, so it says something very, very interesting, which is that just like Tanya, here's our Tanya, lessons in Tanya, right? Just like Tanya, we know the Alter Rebbe says in his preface to Tanya that he wrote Tanya as a way to give personal guidance to everyone who was seeking his mentorship. So too, in our generation, the Igrot Kodesh are like the Tanya of the Rebbe. You ever heard that before? That the Igrot, just like the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya so that you could have access to his guidance through book form, the Igrot are how the Rebbe gives us guidance to be mentored and guided in our day-to-day lives from the Rebbe. Now, I mentioned that this whole book tour is in honor of Hei Teves, and we're encouraging people to buy books of their own. I want to show you a beautiful set. Not just beautiful, but extremely informative. This is called Our Days. And this was published by Deher magazine, which is one of my favorite publications. This is the article on Hei Teves. They have articles on all of the important days in the Chabad calendar. So here's the Hei Teves one. See here it says Didan Notzach of the Sforim, the victory of the books. Hold on a second. I'm going to show off some of the cool pictures. Here's a beautiful picture of the Sforim in boxes being returned to 770. Here's a really great book. This is Gate of Trust, Shaar HaBitachon from Rabbeinu Bechaya. And this became a movement. This is actually sponsored by my good friends Getzian and Lisa Felig, the Felig edition, published by Hayom. This is a wonderful version of Shaar HaBitachon, the classic Shaar HaBitachon, because not only does it have the Hebrew and the English of the classic text, but it has commentaries, and it's full of insights from Chitas and especially from the Rebbe. Many of you know that I have a Shaar. I gave a class on Shaar HaBitachon. I think it's 45 classes, 30 minutes each. We went through the entire Shaar HaBitachon. That class was actually encouraged by a letter that the Rebbe wrote to a Chassid, Mendel Shem Tov, Olav Shalom. And so if you're speaking about the Igrot and the Rebbe's letters to people, one of the effects of the Rebbe's letters was that I gained a personal interest in Shaar HaBitachon, and then I taught Shaar HaBitachon. And what I always tell people is that in the letter that the Rebbe wrote to Mendel Shem Tov, that you should learn Shaar HaBitachon a few times. So I always encourage people, you don't have to study it with me, you don't have to rewatch all of my classes, but you should go through it a few times. And this book just makes it so fun and easy and enjoyable. One more thing about the Rebbe's letters. This collection here is really beautiful. What is this? This box set of 2 hardcover volumes. This is called To the Sons and Daughters of Our People Israel Everywhere. There's something the Rebbe wrote called a Michtov Klali, which means a letter to the sons and daughters of our people Israel everywhere, to the entire Jewish people. And the Rebbe would write these letters before holidays, and usually the letters would have some type of holiday-related theme. So in these 2 volumes, you have the Michtovim Klolim, the letters that the Rebbe wrote to everyone. One of the things I love about the Rebbe's style in the Michtov Klali is the footnotes. The footnotes are so thorough, and really you could spend days looking up all of the footnotes and studying them, and the depth that's there in these seemingly very simple letters, which after all are written to the entire Jewish people, so it's written for scholars and not scholars, for regular people as well. But if you study with the footnotes, there's so much intellectual depth there. It's incredibly exciting learning. Now let's go to the top shelf over here. Here we have the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, and we have the Talmud Bavli. So this is really the core of what we call Torah Shebal Peh, the oral law. We know that when Hashem gave the Torah at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, there was the written, the Torah Shebal, we spoke about that, the Tanach. But then there's also the oral commentary that brings out the meaning. So the core of that oral commentary is in the Mishnah and in the Gemara. Here I got this nice set of Mishnah with vowels in it, really big letters with vowels. Regarding Mishnah, I want to show you something else. I'm just going to set this back here, and I want to go back to the Hayom for a second. Look at the Hayom for Tes Sivan, the 9th day of the month of Sivan. It says here, Mishnah is Oisius Neshama. The letters of the word Mishnah are the same as the letters of Neshama, which is soul. When somebody studies Mishnah, specifically by heart, when you memorize Mishnah and you recite it, and you recite Mishnah wherever you go, it brings incredible benefit to the soul, to the neshama of the person who says it, as well as the neshamas of one's loved ones who are in the world of truth, looking down. So that's an incredibly important thing to remember about Mishnah. Now this Gemara, I chose, some people have like a big Gemara, like they call it the Chosin Shas. So we wanted to conserve space here. This is a small area, but this is a very beautiful Gemara. And the study of Gemara, that's really like the backbone of Torah study. I mean, the majority of time that one studies Torah really is spent on Limud Gemara, with Rashi and Tosfos and the other commentaries. So this is really, every house has to have one of these. You can pick which set you want, but every house should have a Gemara. Anyway, so this is the entire Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, this entire expanse right here. Now, some people study a complete folio, that means both sides, every day. It's called Daf Hayom. It takes them 7 years to complete it. I want to share with you, though, let's go from here to here. This is the Mishnah Torah. Specifically, I have the Rambam La'am version of it. And I'm going to take out a Sefer Mishpatim, because that's where we are in the 3 chapters a day. So the Rebbe started an initiative to study 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah. And if you do that, you finish the entire Mishnah Torah in 1 year. Or alternatively, you can study 1 chapter a day, and then you'll finish the entire Mishnah Torah in 3 years. One of the reasons that Rebbe asked for us to study Mishnah Torah is that it's something that we can all connect to. Not everyone is able to study and understand the Gemara, but everyone can study the Mishnah Torah. And if you can't do that, then you could also study the Sefer HaMitzvahs, which is also from the Rambam. And by doing this, it unites the Jewish people in the study of the entire Torah, because as the Rambam said, he took the bottom line, not the whole discussion and debate that goes behind it, but the bottom line of every subject in Torah, and he put it in Mishnah Torah. So when you go through Mishnah Torah, you're studying the entire Torah, at least the bottom line of the entire Torah. You're studying the breadth of Torah, all the subjects. So if all the Jews study it, so it's the entire Jewish people studying the entire Torah, and it brings us together in that unity, that oneness. I highly recommend, if you're not yet studying Rambam, either 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah, or 1 chapter a day of Mishnah Torah, or the Sefer Mitzvahs every day, definitely that's something to take on. And if you are studying, maybe you want to buy a nice book that'll make it easier and more fun. By the way, anyone know why we chose this version of Mishnah Torah? If you look at pictures of the Rebbe studying, usually going to the Ohel or coming back from the Ohel, you'll see the Rebbe has this version. So when you study Rambam every day and you're doing something that the Rebbe established, and you look at this, which is the version of the book that the Rebbe used, it's a nice reminder. I do want to mention it's Hei Teves, so that means in a month and 10 days is the 15th of Shvat, which is the New Year of Trees. Happy New Year, trees. But it also happens to be this year, for this cycle, the Siyum Rambam, where people from all over the world are completing the 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah, and then the next day we'll start it over again. So definitely this is a good time to, don't wait until the Siyum, jump aboard now, and you have momentum going already when we start again. So we mentioned Mishnah Torah from the Rambam, which is halacha, meaning the bottom line law of how you're supposed to actually conduct yourself. On a similar note, I just want to show you here, we have the Shulchan Aruch. Let me take this out here. This is the Shulchan Aruch Harav, which means it's from the Alter Rebbe, the Tanya. Shner Zalman is the Alter Rebbe's name. And that itself is very interesting. The name Shneor is Shnei Or, 2 lights. Because the Alter Rebbe not only wrote Tanya, which is what we call Penimius HaTorah, the inner secrets of the Torah, Chassidus, but he also wrote the Shulchan Aruch, which is Jewish law, which we call Nigla the Torah, the revealed portion of the Torah, the legalistic or the practical. And so he was a master of both areas of the Torah. Come with me over here. We have a nice Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. The Kitzer from Rav Shlomo Gansfried. A nice Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. That's the abridged code of Jewish law. And here we have Hebrew with vowels on one side, English on the other side. Every home should have a Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. I mean, this is the basics of the basics. I'll show you a couple of these books. These are beautiful books. A lot of scholarship and research went into these. These are both from Shem, from Jewish Educational Media. So the early years, that is biographical. Here's a map of Yekaterinslav. That's where the Rebbe grew up. Here's a young picture of Rebbe Chaim. That's the town of Lubavitch. And then this is Tishrei in Lubavitch, also from Shem, from Jewish Educational Media. And this goes, look at these gorgeous photographs. Here's the Rebbe right after Yom Kippur. The Rebbe's wearing his kittel. This is the Rebbe giving lekach, honey cake. You can see the cake, the box. The Rebbe's in his sukkah in front of 770. Let me show you this. This is from Sichos in English. Sichos in English literally started as translating the Rebbe's Sichos, which the Rebbe would say at every Farbrengen, into English. Rabbi Yena Avtzon Olav Shalom was empowered with that task. But then it evolved into so much more, which was translating all of Chassidus basically into English. So like for instance, we have lessons in Sefer Maimonim. Let's take a look at this. So look, these are classic Maimonim from the Rebbe. These are all from Maimonim of the Rebbe. Basi Lagani, Leisir Mishakela, Maim Rabim, B'Mishnayos, V'Yate Titzave, the Rebbe's last Maimer, the Rebbe's first Maimer, the Rebbe's last Maimer. And then let me show you this. I recommend to everyone who's getting married and anyone who ever got married, this is Lessons in L'chad Doidi, and this is the wedding mimer. This is what in Lubavitch the Chassan says at the Kabbalas Panim, and this is the foundations of everything. Look at this, Lessons in Derech Mitzvei Secha. Derech Mitzvei Secha is a sefer from the Tzemach Tzedek, who is the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, who he raised from childhood, and he was the third Chabad Rebbe, so this is his book, and it has Hasidic explanations of different mitzvahs. This is a classic. The Rebbe recommend, by the way, for beginners of Chassidus, the Derech Mitzvei Secha, the Maimorim in Derech Mitzvei Secha is a great way to begin learning Chassidus. Lessons in Hei Teves is from the Rebbe Rashab. That's the fifth Rebbe of Chabad. That's the grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek was the grandson of the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe Rashab was the grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek. Now, if you don't know all of the names and the lineage and the dates and the relationships, I have a brand new book. Let me show you this. This just came out, called 7 Generations, a portrait of the Chabad Rebbes. Look at this. This is amazing. So, for instance, go to the Alter Rebbe, his picture. Here are his famous books. So we spoke about that. Tanya and Shulchan Aruch, his popular Nigunim, where he lived, where he's buried. Here's the Tzemach Tzedek. Here's his picture. And then look, here, this is Derech Mitzvei Secha. This is what the original Derech Mitzvei Secha looks like. This is an amazing book. It has family connections, timeline, maps, famous Sfarim, popular Nigunim, did you know, like facts about the Rebbeim, and stories. Has great stories in here. It's called 7 Generations. Also, here is a beautiful short biography of the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Chana. This is Rebbe Chaim Mushka. And of course, when you come to the Ohel, you can also visit the resting place of the Rebbe Chana and of Rebbe Chaim Mushka. Being that we're mentioning the Rebbe's mother, I want to show you this from the Rebbe's father. This is gems from Likkutei Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father. And this was published by Hayom, our good friends, and Hayom, who promote the daily study of Chumash, Tilim, Tanya, and Rambam, and so much more. For instance, this book here. And now I just want to show you this shelf, Likkutei Sichos, Aleph through Lamed Aleph, and then wraps around Lamed Tes, all 39 volumes here to here. Likkutei Sichos are the edited talks of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And this is the primary study. If you want to enter the Rebbe's world of Torah and to view all of Torah and all of life through the Rebbe's lens, this is where it happens. And it opens up a whole new vista. Anyone who learns Likkutei Sichos. Now, we started here at the SoulWords House, just to have a block from the Ohel, a weekly class, Sundays, 10:30 in the morning. We serve bagels and lox and coffee, and it's very comfortable, and different people from all over the world actually come here and they learn with us. We're doing Chelik Aleph. Chelik Aleph, that's the first volume. And these are the first Sichos of Likkutei Sichos. These are the foundational Sichos. These are the basics that everything else is built on, and we learn this every week with Hashem's help. And if you want to come join us, like I said, bagels and lox and coffee, and join us Sundays at 10:30 and learn Likkutei Sichos with us. Or you could watch online on soulwords.org/ls or on our YouTube channel or on Spotify or all the other podcast platforms. The main thing is to do the learning. And in general, let me just say that the Sforim are here to make our environment holier. Like I said, bias mali Sforim, just having the books around us already accomplishes something. But then additionally, there's the idea of learning the Sforim, and then there is doing what the Sforim talk about, putting it into practice in our day-to-day lives. So as we said at the beginning, this is a day that the Rebbe encouraged us to buy new books. So we're going to have links below to buy all the books that we spoke about. The Rebbe encouraged that those who sell the books should make it as accessible as possible around this time of year and to make sales, to make a big sale. So a lot of these books are steeply discounted right now. This is the time to do it. So I want to bless you that you should be able to purchase many Sforim, and you should be surrounded by many holy books, and you should study many holy books, and you should do what the holy books say to do, and have a life that is the living embodiment of all of the holy words in the holy books.